Welcome everyone to this session called Excluded Voices, Climate Justice Activists and COP26. It's a pleasure to be chairing it, where we'll be hearing from two climate justice activists who weren't able to make it to COP, and one who attended and felt that not all voices were included in the same way. So the discussion will be about people's climate justice activists from most affected MAPA, referring to most affected people and places, and Indigenous people, and whether their voices were excluded in the COP summit and also in wider climate justice movements. So we'll start by hearing from each of the speakers, have a bit of a discussion, and then open the floor to questions. So for a bit of context, the UN Climate Change Conference COP26 took place in Glasgow in November 2021. November, I think, yeah, good, nods. It was criticised by many as being exclusionary, highly exclusionary, Black, Indigenous and people of colour, most climate change is in attempting. And even there, the number of fossil fuel lobbyists outweighing the number of representatives from countries most affected by climate change. So, without further ado, I'm delighted to welcome our speakers. Mustafa Gerima is an advocate for the shea nut tree after witnessing the destruction of this precious species firsthand. Mustafa, do you want to give us a wave? And he has carried out walking advocacy, first by walking 520 kilometres from the Parliament of Uganda to West Nile, and then walking 664 kilometres from the Parliament of Uganda to the United Nations Environment Programme office in Nairobi, Kenya. He has been involved in continuous advocacy about the shea nut tree species through various platforms like radio, TV, public gatherings, schools and other social gatherings. And since last year, he embarked on a journey of raising 8 million shea seedlings, and this year they're raising about 1 million shea seedlings. Yusuf, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Yusuf Baluch, and I'm a climate justice activist with Fridays for Future MAPA, and I'm active in Fridays for Future International and organizer with Fridays for Future Baluchistan, which is my local group. And yeah, I've been involved in climate activism after experiencing the first-hand impacts of the climate crisis in my community and hearing different stories from my community, how people are being affected by the climate crisis and how the people had to migrate from their homes and to other places because of extreme heat and flooding in their areas, and the foreign companies are exploiting their lands, and just because of that, ultimately they have to leave their homes because of extreme weather events. So after that, I got involved in Fridays for Future, and
Thank you. And Sumaya is a climate activist from the city of Mombasa in Kenya and founder of the Blue Earth organisation, grassroots CBO, whose main aim is to tackle plastic pollution, regenerating areas that have been affected by pollution, infrastructure development and climate change, as well as combating the climate crisis through nature-based solutions. And their program is focused on the restoration of mangroves in an area that is prone to flooding. And the mangroves were destroyed to pave way for infrastructure development. And having planted over 10,000 seedlings in 1 year, they're working to tackle the SDGs 13, 14 and 15. So thank you all for being with us. I'm going to hand over to Mustafa first. Last October, you were very active on Twitter, sharing your story of being an Indigenous climate activist and farmer from northern Uganda at COP26. And shared a tweet that said, to make it to COP, you need to excessively pay for air tickets, have a badge which most of us can't get, $4,000 for accommodation and be vaccinated in a world where rich nations have hoarded large amounts of vaccines. So, Mustafa, can you tell us a bit more about your experience with climate action and the barriers you faced attending COP?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. And here in Uganda, it's already a good evening. I'm afraid your voice was a bit interrupted, but I think the prelude you gave was very right. And for the sake of others, I may only mention my name and what I've been doing long before. Yes, as you pronounce rightly, my name is Mustafa Gerima. I am a former biology school teacher now who left teaching 6 years ago to delve into these uncharted waters of environmental activism. It's uncharted because along the way, it's not really easy. Yeah, I must say that I'm profoundly excited to be here on this panel tonight and to be with beautiful faces sharing my experience and the struggle as it continues. Yes, my journey into activism started way back in the year 2016. That's when I was admitted in a hospital suffering from anorexia officer that had to be operated. And this is a hospital called Lacho Hospital in northern Uganda. And you might remember that this was the particular city that was tossed by the long decade war of northern Uganda that was by the Lord's Resistance Army. So I got myself being operated in that hospital. That was in the year 2016. And so while at the hospital, I saw people were scrambling for the few tree seeds. And I said, now it is from the hospital that people know the importance of trees. And outside the hospital, they are very busy, destroying the vegetation. Why is it that they only realize the importance of these trees while they're in the hospital? This was both the patients, my fellow patients, and their caretakers who were scrambling for the few tree seeds to get that soothing, sensation of the area. So a question came to my mind. I said, once I walk out of the hospital here successfully, I'm going to go out and leave my classroom teaching and instead embark on open air teaching of the public. And I was in the hospital in March 2016, and I took 1 month to rest, to recover. That was in April. So come May, I went back to school and I only declared to the management that I'm not going to continue teaching the 4 walls of the classroom. I rather prefer to go and teach the public out there, following what I saw in the hospital. There is much need to educate the masses about the importance of trees, as was really seen in the hospital situation. So in June, I got myself prepared to delve in this new assignment. And by July, I already started moving around the country. Many of you might know that Uganda is one country that is a bit unique. And I am sure you are in the UK, and Uganda was given a name by the former Prime Minister of UK, that's Sir Winston Churchill, that Uganda is a pearl of Africa. And the exact place where he stood to pronounce this is what I chose to begin my advocacy from. So in July, I went to the southwestern part of Uganda that really used to be very beautiful, hence the name, the Pearl of Africa. But little did I know that when I was there, this name was not to be held. And I said, what is happening? And I continued moving other parts of the country, and I found the story is not what Winston Churchill knew those years ago. And of course, I was still from a humble beginning with my advocacy. Then there came a chance in 2019 after being away from my birthplace for close to 3 decades, I got a chance to go to my village. So along the way, as I was coming to the village, I saw numerous sacks along the roads. And when I tried to ask my fellow travelers or the revealers what these sacks were containing, they told me these are sacks containing charcoal. I said, but when we're growing, we had never had a story of charcoal being burned here. What is happening? As the story continued, I later discovered that the charcoal business was targeting one single species. And this species is what we call the sheer nut tree. And this is a species that is our cultural identity. It has multifunctional benefits. I said, but of all trees, why are they destroying these tree species? Then I think my heart got pain. And I said, I think I'm not going to rest. I have to do all what I can within my reach. And so when I finished my village escapade, I went back to the western part of this country. That's where the Ranjori Mountains are found. So when I was back to the Ranjori Mountains, I said I'm going to do something which my own people are going to stand up and listen to what I'm doing. And this thing was to organize a very long walk. I walked from the Parliament of Uganda up to my regional town, a walk that could take me 520 kilometers, which I did in 14 days' time. And the worst part of it is that 106 kilometer stretch of the walk was through the national park, what we call the Murchison Falls National Park. Is the largest national park in Uganda. So I had literally sacrificed my life to move through this, but my target was just to raise the eyebrows of my own people, because they will rather listen to you through a hard and unusual situation. So I chose to walk, and indeed the walk was a good raiser to my own people. So by the time I was approaching the national park, everybody was asking, how is he going to move through this national park? How is he going to pass there? Because we have the big 5 animals in this national park. So because my heart was more than the fear, I moved through the national park. But of course, no human being can really let him or herself be eaten by an animal. So what I did was to talk to the national park authorities to give me some security. Yes, they did, and I was moving with the security guys for 3 days through the national park. So by the time we finished the stretch of the national park, they said you can now continue with your mission. So I did that, and thank God the community would pour onto the streets to see and listen to this lion-hearted man, because they called me as a lion-hearted. And of course, I said the more pain was from losing these species than actually this long and tough walk. So as I said earlier on, I took 14 days to finally arrive at my home area. And this was a distance of 520 kilometers. But now, surprisingly, the whole walk that was for environmental awareness turned out to be a kind of historic walk, as they called it, or legendary walk, because they said nobody had ever walked in the history of this area all that distance and with that braveness. So I said, but I think you don't need to divert my attention from calling me a hero or a legend. But the point here is, let's try to see the hardship of losing these precious species. If my work was really hard, then it was less hard than losing these species. So I compared the work with that eventuality of losing these species, because the species, as I said earlier on, has a multifunctional benefits. It has medicinal benefits. It has cosmetic benefits. I mean, confectionery, it's used in cooking. It is above all our cultural identity. Actually, this is where my main concern was. It's our cultural identity. And while we are going to school, we could also go with the oil, and that will help us in our appetizing of our beans. You know, in our school life, beans were just boiled with water and salted, and you drink. I mean, you eat. So the oil was there to at least to you know, what you guys will call to season it, but for us here we'll say is to appetize it. Yeah. So that was the work, and finally the reception was okay. I was given that real audience, and from there on, the local radio stations and the TV stations started calling me for programs. We'll go on talk shows. Then I said, yeah, the voices started going, but it's not yet far. So in the year 2020, in February, I organized another walk that was from the Parliament of Uganda again up to the United Nations Environment Program Office, because I realized that it was in Africa. I thought earlier on it was in the US, but having realized it was in Africa and just next door to my country, I said I can walk this distance. So I also walked 664 kilometers. And the aim of walking there was to take my message, written message in my hand to UNEP so that they also react to this. My message clearly to them was, this species is getting lost. And if it gets lost, the indigenous people are going to be much affected in so many ways, leave alone their cultural identity. Because in Africa, per se, this species is called a woman's gold. And this is something I didn't know. I always said I am a biology school teacher. So my main mission was merely ecological. I was looking at the ecological effect of losing this. And it was from the UNEP, the United Nations office, that I was now given another task of attaching livelihood aspects onto this advocacy of mine. So as I talk today, I am talking about saving the species from getting vanished or extinct, as well as fighting for the survival of the few trees that are there because they touch the life of the women. In Africa, if the woman's life is touched, automatically the children are also touched. I mean, if a woman is affected, then the children become also victims. So as I talk now, I have two main duties to perform. That is to save the species from extinction, and also to make sure that the women survive on these three species. Now that I have two bands on my shoulders, it takes me to the next point of the challenges in this advocacy. Yes, as I said earlier on in my introduction, I realized this tree was getting lost due to charcoal business. And you know, there are people who do the charcoal business, not my own people who cut these trees. There are people who come from afar, who come to buy land from here. I mean, they either rent or buy the land off. So once they buy this land, they begin cutting indiscriminately, the trees without any remorse. And so it is a very big challenge here. So I said, I think I need to take that. But today I am talking a situation where I am a very big enemy of the commercial charcoal dealers. This is something that actually gives me sleepless nights. Yeah, but the fact is, as I said earlier on, I had to leave my salary job to go into this voluntary or uncharted waters of activism. It's really uncharted because I don't know how deep the activism water is, but as I keep on going every other day, I find really the depth is you can't really measure it. It is so deep that you can't measure it. But of course, once you are in the water, it's not time for you to learn how to swim because you will get drowned. So here I am. I'm now in this situation where it's not easy. For interest of time, I think I need to go to my next agenda. what I talked about was how I got into activism. Yeah, challenges I face, as I said, on the biggest challenge is from what I would call resistance from the commercial charcoal dealers. That's the biggest challenge here. Of course, another challenge is accessing land for the restoration purpose, because my main target, as I said, was to at least raise 8 million seedlings so as to restore around 7,000 acres of land. So how to get this land is still a problem, but this is a challenge. And to me, challenges are a driving force. The more I get challenged, the more my mind works better. So those are some of the challenges. And then another recent challenge is we are looked at, especially in Africa here, as noisemakers, because the way we came to realize recently as a activist is that there is not much political will to join fellow activists in trying to push the whole agenda. Some of us are being looked at as noisemakers, and this is something that really pains. Like for my case, I left. I was a salaried man. I was teaching for money, but I decided to leave that, thinking that what I'm doing will be of a of a global common good. But here somebody tells you you're just making noise. So these are very big challenges. Okay, another challenge also with this activism is like the recent concluded COP, that's COP26. We thought we would be appearing there to give also our views of how our people are suffering here on this side because of this international charcoal business and the related issues of environmental mismanagement. But the COP is a situation where it's like, as they say, entering through the needle of, the eye of the needle, whatever you people call it. In short, what I'm trying to say is attending COPs is not something very easy. Even the recent concluded Stockholm 50, which I just survived to attend by a whisker because I got an email like this evening and tomorrow I had to travel to get a visa and I didn't know who paid for my flight and this. So it is a kind of dilemma for us here, especially in the global south. Doing such kind of things is not really easy. But of course, as for me, I decided to leave my employment and get into this. I said I can't go backwards. So this is the time. Since 2016 up to now, I am just doing that. But yeah, I enjoy what I'm doing despite those challenges. And of course, at first, I did not want to talk about money or financial challenges because this is somebody from doing employment to this kind of volunteering. Somebody will ask you, why did you leave money business and now come to make for us noise? I thought I would do it without myself. But today, I think it's not easy doing it without any financial backup. That's why I also include aspects of financial challenges, especially owing to my 8 million seedling raising. That automatically needs a lot of hands. Financial support. Then, of course, acquiring this land is not a land that is free there. I have to go, and buy it. So these are some of the challenges. And
very much.
yes.
So thank you so much. Sumaya, are you able to hear us?
Hi everyone. Thank you so much. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you, Sumaya.
Hi. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Sumaya Harunani, and I'm an environmentalist and a climate activist from the city of Mombasa in Kenya. I run a CBO known as Blue Earth Organization, whose main aim is to tackle plastic pollution and regenerating areas that have been desecrated due to pollution, climate change, and infrastructure development, as well as tackling climate change through nature-based solutions. My passion for environmentalism started when I saw the need to rid our oceans of the plastic, oceans and beaches from the plastic that whose effects have been choking our environment for a very long time now. So along with my friends, we carried a few beach cleanups, and we realized to organize ourselves, we had to do a lot more. So we came up with the Blue Earth organization, whose main aim was not only to carry out environmental activities, but also to create awareness through public sensitization and active participation. So our current project, our flagship project, is focusing on the restoration of mangroves. Now, we were introduced by mangroves to mangroves by the Kenya Forest Research Institute in December 2019, where we, members of Blue Earth organization, joined as volunteers for a mangrove planting. And we were explained the importance of mangroves over there, and we were advised to adopt a site under our organization's name, since the area needed a lot of restoration to be done, and because the mangroves were destroyed to pave way for infrastructure development that is still going on. There's a bridge that has been constructed over there, so a lot of mangroves were destroyed. So we were advised to adopt a site under our name, and that's what we did. We adopted 2 hectares in 1 year. So from January 2020, we until in 1 year, we managed to plant 10,000, over 10,000 seedlings, and we are still continuing with our planting. Now, the project is led by indigenous community over there, who, along with the community forest association, so their jobs were hit by COVID, and to earn a living, they sell the mangroves, and that is where our mangroves are sourced from. So this is helping them financially and directly, and it also really encourages them to continue greening the environment. Also, apart from that, we got to learn that mangroves absorb 4 to 6 times more carbon than the mature tropical forests. So they are a very vital tool to fight climate change. And that is what we are going through right now, the climate crisis. And also they protect the coastal communities, those communities living at the coastal line, from hurricanes and floods and cyclones, and they prevent soil erosion. So mangroves are very, very important. They're also a breeding hotspot for very many different species like crabs and shrimps, different types of fish. So also for the fishermen, they are very much important. And to fight climate justice, there has to be social justice. And this is where social justice comes in. Because for me, social justice is very important. It is for these communities not to suffer in poverty, for them to meet the basic needs, that is food, shelter, and clothing. Because the communities that are being affected by climate change in my country, the nearby communities, especially those who we have been working on this project, they have to walk, the girls have to drop out from school, they have to walk long distances for water, and just to find the water holes dry. And it's water, something like water, that is a basic need. They have to go looking for it. And education, because I believe it is the right of every child on this planet. They have a right to education. So they have been deprived of all this because of climate change. And also the fishermen not to be able to catch enough fish because the corals have been bleached out, maybe due to ocean acidification and all. So our project revolves around all this. And without social justice, there is no climate justice. And I couldn't go to COP26. I lost this chance because it was a chance missed to raise our voices, our concerns, to share what the communities are going through, to highlight what our communities are going through. And I couldn't go because as an African activist, it was very difficult the hurdles started from getting the badges, having access to the badges, and also the process was very unclear. And we tried a lot, but we couldn't go through. Even the climate organizations in my country who are sponsoring a few members, who are giving priority to well-known African advocates who are doing a good job, but frontline activists and grassroots activists like us were left behind. And the visa process is also it takes very long. Until the last minute you have to wait. So this also affects us by, like, because of the last minute bookings and all, we get the rocket prices, and yeah. So these are the challenges that we faced, and that's our project and what we are doing.
Thank you very much, and we'll share the link to your website, both of you, so everyone can see some photos of your work in action. You can maybe tell us a bit about your activism and also what it was like being at COP.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for having me here. And yeah, I started activism, as I mentioned before, after experiencing all those hurdles. I started working with different movements and organizations to create the voices of those people who are being most affected by the climate crisis. So COP26 was one of my thank you. COP26 was like one of my first ever physical conference that I attended. But instead of facing a lot of hurdle from visa issues to vaccine issues which are not accessible in our country, and the UK government promised to provide vaccines to all the delegates, but they didn't fulfill their promises and they didn't provide vaccines to most of the delegates, especially in global south. So from visa issues to all those hurdles when I came here at COP26, still there were lots of issues. The voices from most affected areas, the voices of indigenous communities and BIPOC, Black, indigenous, people of color were left behind. And I think, like, most of the times we talk about climate action, and when we are talking about climate action, it's extremely important to talk about climate justice, because all those issues which we are facing in our daily life, in our societies, like from social justice, from people of color are being left behind, and from racial justice. So when we connect all those together, and when we like the fight to climate justice is intersectional, and when you're talking about this, it's important to fight for the climate justice. So, like, the people who are being most affected by the climate crisis in every conferences, like indigenous people are the guardian of nature. They have been living with nature with thousands of years. And if we are trying to achieve something and to mitigate the climate crisis, it's extremely important to have those voices in every crucial negotiations. So we have this say, and they have the platforms to speak about. And instead of, like, as Sumaiya mentioned, that climate justice is like social justice. So in most vulnerable communities in global south, when they have been affected by all those things, from floodings to heat waves and so many other natural disaster events, like, most of the times we highlight their sufferings, but it's also important, it's very important to highlight their sufferings, but it's also important to show how they're like resilient, how they're fighting for their rights from decades. So yeah, I think when we try to do something, when we try to achieve climate justice, it's important to have those voices. It's important to know what they have been going through from, like, so many decades. I belong to a region which is called Baluchistan. It's not a country. This is why I say Baluchistan, because the people of Baluchistan are indigenous that land, and most of the times they have been unheard, ignored, and their suffering and resistance is not being shown in the world. So when I say Baluchistan, I mean to show the resistance and suffering of those people who have been unheard. And I see in my community so many people are being displaced because of natural disaster events, and we have so many foreign companies like Canadian and Chinese companies which are exploiting our lands, indigenous lands in Balochistan, including I lost my entire village because of all those exploitation projects, and there are lots of villages which has been displaced because of like all those projects. And I think to achieve climate justice, it's important to fight for all those social issues which are intersectional to climate justice. And climate justice is a product of colonialism and exploitation and this oppressive system which ultimately created the system of operation in our society. So yeah, I think it's extremely important to have those voices and every should make voices. Thank you.
Thank you. But we're going to take a very, very quick question from somebody in the room.
Thank you for your congratulations. It's great. This is a bit of an odd question, but you also spoke about a badge, and it sounds as if badge is perhaps a signifying of power or something. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about why the badge is so important.
To get to such conferences, you have to receive a badge. That is like an invitation. There were application forms that I and my friends, there were a couple of friends of mine, we tried to apply for them, but without a badge. That is the invitation, the main without the badge we cannot get to the conferences. It becomes difficult for us. So also the visa application, they need all those, it's a requirement, so we did apply a few times, but we did not receive any feedback. And yeah, so
if Sumaya allows, I can maybe explain a little bit. Is it okay for you, Sumaya?
yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. So basically, when we need to attend a conference like COP26, it's necessary to have a badge. Badge is like a registration letter from the conference, and it allows us to enter the conference inside. And especially when you're from Global South, it's very hard to get the visa. And when you have that badge, it's a little bit easier. Like when you submit the invitation letter from the conference to the visa application, it become a little bit easier to get the visa. And also getting badges is very hard because only those organizations which are registered to UNFCCC, they get badges for the conference. And it's a movement, like I'm part of Fridays for Future, which is a movement and not registered in UNFCCC. So we need to reach out to NGOs to ask for the badges so we can send our delegates for the conference. So, but it's still hard to get like so many badges for activists in Global South. So yeah, it's one of the issues. I hope that clears.
Thank you. And do we have one super quick question online? Summarize what a successful COP would look like. So, Sumaya, are you up for the challenge?
Yeah, what a successful COP would look like.
Yeah, in 30 seconds. Okay, I'm gonna
okay, our main when we say what a successful COP would look like, we want to be heard. We want our voices to be amplified. We want the leaders to take action instead of just talking and giving the same speeches that have been given over how many COPs have passed, but we've just been hearing the same words. There is no action that has been taken, and we want them to involve us, the youth, the activists who are the frontliners. We want them to involve us in decision making and discussions. And
that was exactly 30 seconds. Okay, Mustafa, did you hear the final challenge of this event? To summarize what a successful COP would look like to you in 30 seconds.
Okay, yeah, I'm just going to be brief. I think my colleague Sumaya has said almost everything. The point here is it's not easy for us to get a badge. As she said, a badge is the first step in trying to attend these conferences. You need to get a badge, that's an accreditation. After getting a badge, then you need to get funding, even getting funding. And the funding is only for flights, accommodation, and your upkeep there, maybe 3 days or 4 days. It's not even easy to find that. So once all this is not easy, that means we cannot present our own people. That means the voices of our people are not going to be represented. Just like Sumaya said, I think in the recent Stockholm conference, we just saw heads of states and these people reading almost 54 or so countries reading the same message. And they were wondering why all this went there to Stockholm with all that money wasted. And yet the frontliners who are the real activists were left out. Also, I think this year's COP, we think need to be a new model of COP. It has to be a COP where the activists, the frontliners have to sit in the main room to make decisions and arrive at solutions.
Okay, and 30 seconds, Yusuf, what would a successful COP look like?
Yeah, I think the successful COP, like when the energy promises change into real action, it's just what we are fighting for. So yeah. And just listen.
Very impressive. So thank you to all our speakers. Thank you for joining, and yeah, let's hope for a more successful COP in the future.